Hey guys, tonight we drift straight into the thick, sticky darkness of the Caribbean, March 1720. Just before the wet season comes howling, you're standing on the creaking planks of a lonely Royal Navy outpost at Port Morant, Jamaica. Salt sweat trickling down your neck as you squint into the night. Lanterns bob far out on the water, the only thing separating you from an ocean that feels older than time. The air tastes of rum, tar and old rope. Behind you, dogs bark, roosters mutter, and somewhere a fiddler plays a tune too slow to dance to. But all the real danger is out there, just past the reef where the surf keeps secrets. Nobody says it out loud, but everyone's spooked. 3 British ships have gone missing, just vanished, as if the sea got hungry and forgot to spit out the bones. The taverns are full of men whispering about curses, haunted islands, and the price of gold. You can't decide what's worse, the rumours or the way even the most hardened boozin is suddenly crossing himself before bed. It's your turn on night watch. Of course it is. You probably won't survive this. If you're finding this tale of vanished ships and Royal Navy headaches just as eerie as we do, give it a like, and tell us where and when you're watching. Maybe it's late, maybe there's fog outside your window, maybe you're a little too close to the coast for comfort. Drop your local time and place below just in case you spot a ghost like yourself, and keep your eyes on the horizon. Now take a breath and listen. Somewhere out there, something is waiting. You're half dozing at your post, one hand wrapped around your musket. When the change comes, the breeze drops. The air goes dead, so quiet you can hear the blood moving in your ears. The usual clatter of drinking and dice behind you fades. You peer into the black, every muscle tense, because it's your job to notice the impossible. Midnight. The moon is nothing but a scratch, barely enough to silhouette the lonely masts out on the bay. You blink and for a moment, you swear you see a pale shape, a sliver of sail where no ship should be. You rub your eyes, shake yourself and it's gone. At dawn, the fort is buzzing. The Pelican is overdue. Then a day turns into 2, then 3. No sign. Not a single broken spar or floating barrel. The captain's log is empty, save for frantic scribbles from the governor's clerk. No word, no signal. Possible mutiny. Storm, but everyone knows storms leave wreckage. Mutinies leave gossip. This is different. This is nothing. You help launch a cutter with a nervous, sunburned crew. The Gull, barely more than a dinghy with delusions of grandeur, heads out into the shallows. The wind is stiff, the water glittering like glass. Someone tries a joke about haunted rum barrels, but nobody laughs. You circle the spot where the Pelican vanished. The water is too calm, too bright. No flotsam, no sharks, not even a gull. You stare so long your eyes ache, but the only thing you see is your own face, tired and a little afraid. The following night, the harbour's mood sours. Sailors crowd the taverns, everyone trading a different ghost story. Someone swears they saw a ship with no crew, gliding backwards through the fog. Someone else claims the local priest won't bless any ships until the spell is broken. It's only when a Dutch merchant limps into port, eyes wild, hands shaking, that things get serious. "We saw her," he says, voice cracked. Black hull, no flag, drifting against the wind. He offers a prayer in 3 languages, then takes the next boat out for Nassau, refusing to ever sail these waters again. And now, the governor is furious. He stamps around in his coat, demanding explanations, threatening to fire every officer within 10 leagues, unless someone brings him a piece of one of those missing ships, or at least a ghost to blame. The rumours get worse, not better. Old men mutter about a devil's fleet, a ship crewed by the lost and the damned. You want to believe it's all just stories, that the only thing haunted here is your imagination. But then you see the Anne-Marie go missing, a fat little merchant vessel, gone between one sunrise and the next. Nothing left but a trail of nervous rumours and empty sea. That's when the order comes down from Kingston. The Royal Navy is to investigate, and they're sending their best ghost hunter, Captain Johnson, a man who believes more in tricks than in curses, and whose temper is famous from here to Bermuda. So you wait, watching the horizon for signs. Any sign that what's hunting ships in the Caribbean is something you can fight, or at least something you can see, because in these waters, you learn fast. The only thing worse than the monsters you know are the ones that don't even bother to show their teeth. The rumours reach Port Royal before the facts do, because in the Caribbean, rumours move faster than ships, faster even than fear itself, and fear is in the air, thick as gunpowder smoke, curling through every alley of the port city. You, somehow, are still on the Navy's muster roll, though you begin to wonder if the pay is worth the anxiety settling in your gut. A week after the incident with the drifting ghost, all conversation at the Blue Anchor Tavern revolves around missing ships, haunted seas, and the angry spirits of drowned buccaneers. You overhear fishermen, grizzled men with skin like old rope, swearing never to cast nets past the headland. Saw the devil's lantern. I did, one mutters. No ship burns so cold. The Royal Navy, of course, doesn't deal in ghosts, at least not on paper. The officials in Kingston are methodical and dismissive at first, blaming everything on storms, mutiny or drunkenness. But then another vessel fails to make port, and then another, 5 disappearances in 2 months, all near the Windward Passage, that tight and treacherous channel north of Jamaica, where the trade winds funnel ships and sometimes it seems they're doomed. That's when the merchant reports start. The first comes from a Dutch trader, pale as lard, hands shaking so badly his account is written by his mate. He swears that just after sunset, his ship spotted a vessel off the starboard bow, black as midnight, sails drooping but full, gliding without a sound, no crew on deck, no flag, no lantern. The trader gives the thing a wide berth, but for half an hour it seems to follow, changing course as his ship does, always at a distance, then gone. The trader, a sensible man, decides his cargo of tobacco is not worth his life. He turns tail for Nassau and won't sail that passage again for any king or coin. You hear similar stories again and again. A Spanish sloop limps into port missing 3 men, all supposedly driven mad by what they saw, one raving about faces in the fog. Another ship, a French cutter, loses its mast in a panic when the captain tries to outrun a shadow that follows for hours, just out of cannon range. Even the pirates begin to steer clear of those waters, which tells you just how serious it's become. The Caribbean is crawling with cutthroats, but none of them want anything to do with a ship that moves without wind and makes even the bravest men jump at their own shadows. It is in this atmosphere, electric, crackling with tension, that the next big event occurs, a sighting close to Port Royal itself. You are ashore at the time, grabbing a rare moment's sleep in your hammock at the barracks when the warning bell clangs from the main harbour. Bleary-eyed, you and the rest of the watch rush to the dock, expecting news of pirates or, heaven forbid, the French. Instead, you find the governor himself already on the quay, jacket flapping in the breeze, barking questions at a ragged merchant captain who can barely speak. It came out of the mist, the man stammers, eyes wild. No lights, no sound, just drifted past our bow. We tried to hail her, but there was no answer. No one moved on deck, like she was dead, and watching us. The harbour watch, half of them superstitious as a litter of old grannies, start whispering about ghost ships in earnest now. The governor, furious, orders a full investigation. He wants facts, not fairy tales. But when divers search the reported location at dawn, they find nothing, not even a rope end. The sea gives up no secrets. By midday, every ship at anchor has posted double lookouts. You're assigned night watch on the HMS Minerva, a sturdy but aging frigate, with orders to observe and report any strange activity. The first few hours pass in tense silence. The deck creaks, the lanterns flicker. The familiar rhythm of the waves and sails is oddly comforting. You almost convince yourself the stories are just that. Stories, maybe a little too much rum, a little too much heat. Then, around 2 in the morning, a cry goes up from the foredeck. Ship, ahoy! Off the port quarter. Adrenaline blasts through your veins as you scramble to your feet, spyglass in hand. There, just visible in the faint moonlight, is a shape. A ship. Surely, but wrong somehow. Low in the water, hull gleaming wet and dark, sails limp but somehow still catching what little breeze there is. No lights, no colours, no sound. You watch, frozen, as it slides past. For a moment you could swear you see someone on the deck, a tall figure in a dark coat, but when you blink it's gone. The ship disappears as suddenly as it came, swallowed by the mist. The officers are rattled. When you report what you saw, they exchange uneasy glances. Could be smugglers, one suggests weakly, or French, using tricks. But their voices are strained. Morning brings no explanation. No ship is sighted again, and the day is spent checking gunpowder, fixing rigging, and spreading rumours even faster than tar on a hull. The only thing anyone is sure of, something is out there, and it isn't playing by the usual rules. Days turn to weeks, and the ghost ship becomes a fixture in every conversation. Children play at being pirates and navy men in the street, arguing over who has to be the haunted crew. Old sailors swear by their wooden legs that it ain't natural. The governor's patience wears thin as insurance rates climb and trade slows to a trickle. It is, ironically, the Royal Navy's reputation for order and discipline that now works against them. People expect action, and they're not seeing results. Finally, word comes down from Kingston. The Admiralty has had enough. There are whispers that London itself has been embarrassed by the rumours spreading through merchant circles, threatening the Empire's hold over these lucrative waters. A new man is being sent, someone who, you are told, does not believe in fairy stories. Captain Arthur Johnson. Johnson is a legend of sorts, though not always for reasons his superiors like. He is said to have a talent for solving problems with unorthodox methods. Some say he once dressed his crew as monks to lure out a group of corsairs off the Azores. Others claim he survived being marooned on a sandbar for 2 weeks, living off nothing but turtles and rum. What's clear is that he's not a man to be easily spooked. His arrival is an event. The HMS Resolute glides into the harbour on a still morning, all black and brass, looking as crisp and intimidating as her captain. Johnson steps off the gangplank, boots polished, face unreadable, and begins questioning everyone from the governor to the dock boys. He's methodical, listens to the wildest tales with the same calm expression as the most mundane. You're summoned to recount your own sighting. He fixes you with a level gaze, taking in every word, but betrays no judgment. When the meeting breaks, you catch a bit of gossip from the junior officers. Johnson has been given direct orders from the Admiralty. Solve this quietly. Restore confidence. No excuses. It's the kind of job that can end a career if bungled, or make a man's fortune if handled well. That evening, you're invited to dine with Johnson and his senior officers, a rare honour. The meal is plain: salt pork, hard bread, a few boiled yams. Conversation, however, is sharp. Johnson asks questions you hadn't considered. What was the wind like? Did you hear water against the hull? Did anyone smell gunpowder? What colour was the moon? He scribbles notes between bites, then finally leans back, eyes narrowed. Gentlemen, he announces, I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in tricks, and I intend to catch whoever is playing this game with the king's ships. You try to hide your relief. Johnson wastes no time. Within days, he organises the largest search the Caribbean has seen in years. 4 ships, each assigned a specific patrol zone, lantern signals, coded to prevent confusion. You're posted as lookout on the Resolute herself, feeling a mix of pride and dread. If anyone can put this ghost ship business to rest, it's this man, or so you hope. The first few nights are tense, but uneventful. The ocean is calm, the only lights are those of your own fleet, and the sky is heavy with stars. Every creak, every ripple of water puts the crew on edge. Johnson paces the deck in silence, eyes forever scanning the horizon. Then, on the 4th night, everything changes. You're just settling into your post when a strange stillness falls over the water. The breeze dies, the sails droop. Somewhere, a dog howls on a distant shore, and for a moment the only sound is the slap of your own heartbeat. Then out of the corner of your eye, you see it. A vessel close enough to hit with a well-thrown bottle, but completely silent. No lights, no flags, no signs of life. It's the same ship you saw before, you're certain, but this time, there's no mist to hide her. Johnson wastes no time. All hands, he roars. Signal the other ships, prepare to intercept. The crew jumps into action. Cannons are primed, muskets loaded. The Resolute pivots smoothly, cutting across the phantom ship's path. You hold your breath, finger twitching on the trigger, but as you close in, the ship simply vanishes. No splash, No wake. One moment it's there, the next empty water. The silence that follows is deafening. Johnson's face is stony, but you can sense the uncertainty rippling through the crew. You don't sleep much that night. When dawn comes, Johnson gathers everyone on the quarterdeck. "This is no ghost," he announces. "It's a trick. Someone is out there making fools of us. And I intend to catch them." He sets his jaw. "Tonight, we lay a trap." As the sun sets over Port Royal, painting the clouds gold and bloody red, you prepare for a night unlike any other. The game is afoot, and you, lucky soul, are caught right in the middle. You barely have time to choke down your ration of salted beef before the mood on board shifts. Gone are the half-hearted jokes about haunted ships. Gone are the lazy stretches on deck under the Jamaican sun. By the time the order comes to weigh anchor, every sailor on the Resolute is wide-eyed and jittery, running on adrenaline and superstition. Captain Johnson calls for total silence after dark, the better to hear anything odd across the water. You wonder if he believes deep down that sound is the only clue left. The plan is simple, at least on paper. Johnson knows the ghost ship never attacks, never boards, never fires, just haunts and vanishes. So he borrows a page from the pirate's playbook. A decoy. He chooses the Daisy, a plump, slow-moving merchant vessel with a leaky hull and a crew that grumbles about their bad luck. They're promised extra hazard pay, which earns a few grins but a lot more muttering. The Daisy is loaded with barrels, some filled with nothing but seawater for ballast, just in case the real cargo is at risk, and set adrift at dusk in the Windward Passage. Sails trimmed for minimum speed. You're stationed atop the Resolute's mainmast with the best spyglass on board, a prized possession supposedly filched from a dead Spanish admiral. The rest of Johnson's crew, twice the usual number of Marines, all armed, are split between the Resolute and two other Navy sloops, hidden in the shadow of a coral island where the water is shallow enough for concealment, but deep enough for a quick escape. The night is sticky, humid, unnervingly quiet. Every creak of the hull sounds like a warning. The moon rises late, hidden behind cloud. You hear the slow clatter of dice in the forecastle, then even that dies away. Time slows. Minutes crawl by, thick with dread. Johnson, the shadow at the rail, barely moves except to signal with a shuttered lantern every half hour. You catch sight of him glancing skyward now and then, as if looking for omens. And then the moment you'll remember for the rest of your life, a shape materializes. At first you think it's a trick of the eye, a blur, a smudge against the faint gleam of stars. Then you realize it's a ship. No lanterns, no sound, low to the water, like someone tried to drown it but failed. Your breath hitches. You count. 1, 2, 3 faint glimmers, as if someone far off is playing with matches, shielding them from the wind. You blink hard. The ghost ship glides right up to the Daisy, close enough that you half expect to hear a cheer or a gunshot. Nothing. The Daisy's crew huddles below deck, sweating bullets and probably cursing the day they ever signed on. Johnson, silent as a statue, motions for patience. He wants to see what the Phantom does. Suddenly a second ship appears, a mirror image of the first. 2 ghosts, not one. You hear the nervous intake of breath from the deck below, and as you watch, their sails catch an impossible wind, one that doesn't touch the Daisy, and they begin to drift apart, moving off in opposite directions. Johnson seizes his chance. The signal flashes. All hands. Prepare to pursue. But as the Resolute and the other sloops lurch from hiding, disaster nearly strikes. The nearest ghost ship turns away at impossible speed, vanishing into the dark. The second cuts in close behind the Daisy, and for a brief, stomach-dropping moment, it seems to sink into the water itself. There's a faint splash, a cry from the Daisy's watch, and then nothing. No chase, no enemy. The Daisy is left drifting, unharmed. The whole episode takes less than 5 minutes, but the tension leaves your nerves jangling for hours. When Johnson gathers the officers on deck, he's furious, but thoughtful. "No ship can move like that without help," he says quietly. "There's a trick to this, and I'll wager it's simpler than we think, but we need proof." The next day is spent combing the waters. The Daisy's crew reports hearing voices, a man's laugh, a woman's humming, though no one can agree on the tune. You find a bit of scorched cloth drifting in the water, blackened as if by tar. but otherwise, nothing. Johnson sends messages up and down the coast, seeking any clue about strange paint, hidden sails, or floating debris. He's convinced the ghost ships are real vessels, disguised and cunning, but human all the same. The next night, he revises the trap. This time, the Resolute acts as bait, lanterns out, moving slowly with the current, while the two smaller Navy sloops and a hired fishing smack hide in the lee of a sandbar. You're below deck, helping the surgeon clean his tools, because apparently your clever hands are good for something besides knot tying. The stillness is oppressive. You can feel the anticipation in your bones. Midnight, a sudden hush falls across the ship. The only sound is your own breath. You glance up, everyone is frozen. Then, 3 sharp knocks on the hull. The lookout's cry splits the silence. Shadow off the bow. You scramble above decks. There it is, a ship so close you can see the glimmer of wet tar on her hull. But as the Resolute swings around, cannons primed, the ghost ship pulls away with astonishing grace, slipping between shoals and vanishing into the fog. Not a shot fired. Not a word spoken. You almost laugh at the absurdity. If it's a pirate, it's the cleverest one you've ever seen. Johnson is more determined than ever. If a ship can vanish, it can also be found, he growls. And I intend to find her crew. Daylight brings yet more whispers. The local pilots say there's a rumor of old pirate tricks, sailing low in the water, soaking sails in mud, painting hulls with tar to blend into the night. Some mention hidden reefs and secret channels only the oldest islanders know. It begins to make sense. You remember the shape of the ships, the way their sails drooped but moved anyway, the flashes of light that seemed more distraction than signal. One of the pilots, a weather-beaten man with one eye and the remains of a French accent, swears he saw similar tricks off the Florida coast, years back. They don't want to fight, see, just want you confused, lose a ship or two, make you chase shadows. That night, Johnson doubles the watches and arms every man. No one is allowed above deck alone. It's the longest night of your life. Nothing happens, but your imagination runs wild. Every ripple, every stray cloud looks like an enemy. On the 4th day, your luck changes. A merchantman limps into port, battered and panicked. She claims to have been boarded by men dressed all in black, their faces smeared with ash, voices low and strange. The pirates took no cargo, only provisions and a few barrels of tar, but the captain is adamant. He saw their leader, a tall man with a silver-tipped cane, who spoke perfect English. He looked like a Navy officer, the captain says, shaking. But his eyes, like he could see right through you. Johnson's interest is piqued. An officer gone rogue, he muses. That would explain the discipline, the strategy, even the arrogance. Armed with this new intelligence, he plots a different course. The Resolute and her companions will sail openly, challenging the ghost ships to show themselves. At the same time, he sends a handful of trusted men, including you, as luck would have it, aboard a fast, shallow draft cutter to slip ahead, hugging the reefs and listening for any hint of hidden anchorages or strange signals. You spend days weaving through the cays and shoals, your hands blistered from the oars, your mind racing with theories. Each night, you see glimpses, lanterns far off, scraps of blackened sail, the sound of laughter carried on the wind. You never quite catch them, but you feel the presence, just out of reach. Then on a windless dawn, you spot something new, a cluster of footprints in the sand on an uninhabited quay, and just offshore, the faint outline of a ship hull coated in tar and draped with seaweed, half sunk to disguise its shape. You signal the Resolute at once. Johnson moves fast. By sundown, he has the place surrounded. When the pirates return at midnight, 3 boats, silent as death, they walk straight into the Navy's arms. A brief, brutal struggle follows. No ghosts here, just men, desperate and cornered. The prisoners are sullen, refusing to speak, except for one, a boy no older than 15, who blurts out the truth. Captain Crowley, he made us paint the ships black. Told us, if they can't see you, they can't catch you. Johnson's eyes narrow. Crowley, I should have known. The mystery is far from over, but at least you have a name, a method, and a trail. The next step is obvious. Find Crowley, and put an end to the ghost ships for good. You can't help but smile, just a little. After all, it's not every day you get to hunt the living dead. The crew's nerves settle, just a little, now that the ghosts bleed when cut, and the prisoners sulk in the ship's makeshift brig, smelling more of fear and sweat than sulphur and sea brine. Word spreads fast. These are not spirits but men in rags, painted by moonlight and led by a traitor to king and country. Captain Johnson wastes no time interrogating the boy, though not unkindly. The lad, grateful for water and food, gives up detail after detail in a rush. How Crowley pays double the going pirate wage. How every man must smear his skin with mud before a raid. And how, above all, they trust their captain's cunning above fortune or faith. You're called in to listen and learn. Johnson's method is fascinating. He asks after Crowley's habits, where he anchors, how he finds the navy, what signals he uses to gather his ships. The boy draws a rough chart on a bread crust, showing a snarl of inlets and hidden beaches along the Bahama banks. He likes to hide in plain sight, sir. Moves at dusk, never at dawn. The news is chilling. Crowley isn't some half-crazed buccaneer, but an ex-lieutenant of His Majesty's Navy, thrown out for conduct unbecoming, though what that means, the boy never says. Now Crowley leads his crew with a Navy man's discipline and a devil's imagination. It makes sense, suddenly, why these ships always slip away. Crowley knows the Admiralty's mind. He knows the patterns of patrols and the weaknesses of men grown too sure of order. He uses darkness, silence, and a fleet that melts into the mangroves. Armed with this knowledge, Johnson calls a council on the Resolute's quarterdeck. The senior officers, stern men with faces as weathered as their hats, lean over the lad's crude map. You can't help but notice the mix of respect and dread in their eyes. It's one thing to fight pirates, another to chase your own training turned inside out. Crowley's next move? Johnson asks, his voice low but urgent. A lieutenant pipes up. If he's low on tar and food, he'll make for Andros or the Bight. Somewhere shallow. If we corner him, he'll try to slip out at night, maybe burn a ship as a distraction. Johnson nods. We use his tricks against him. Let's herd him to the banks, force him to fight on our terms. A plan forms, half cunning and half gamble. Sail as if wounded, sails patched and slow, all the while hiding two fast cutters behind island cover. The Resolute herself will dangle as bait, lanterns shuttered until the last moment. The hope is that Crowley, bold as rumour suggests, will strike the vulnerable prize. The days that follow are a masterclass in tension. The Resolute limps through turquoise channels, battered sails flapping. The sun burns your skin. The mosquitoes eat what's left. And still you scan the horizon, searching for that telltale smear of black against the blue. Each evening, Johnson drills the crew in silence and signal. No loud voices, no fires, every man ready to spring awake at a whisper. The nights are the hardest. The ship creaks, frogs croak from the marshy islands, and your thoughts gnaw at themselves. What if Crowley comes for you next? What if he's already watching? On the third night, the wind shifts. A lookout. One of the island pilots calls out softly. Lanterns, 2 points off starboard. You squint through the gloom. Sure enough, 3 lights flicker and fade, like fireflies or winking eyes. Too high for fishermen, too low for honest traders. Johnson is all nerves and resolve, signalling the cutters to hold fast. Let them come, he whispers. Let them think we're wounded. For an hour, nothing moves. Then, without warning, a black shadow slides out from behind a sandspit. The ghost sails closer, moving fast for a ship supposedly crippled. Johnson lets her close the distance, waiting until the hull is nearly within grappling range. At the last second, he shouts the order, lanterns, marines to the rails. In a heartbeat, the Resolute blazes with light. The crew, practiced and desperate, lets fly with muskets and grappling lines. The pirates, caught utterly by surprise, shout in confusion, but Crowley's discipline holds. His men cut their anchor lines and flee, slipping through the shoals with terrifying skill. 2 of the Navy cutters chase after, firing blind into the night. You catch glimpses of chaos, a mast crashing down, a pirate swinging from rigging to skiff, the crack of a pistol in the darkness. The water erupts in confusion, half battle, half ballet, all terror. In the confusion, the Resolute herself nearly runs aground on a hidden bank. The charts say deep water. Crowley's real map, it seems, is in his head. Johnson curses, orders the sails trimmed, and the crew pushes her off the sand with poles and prayer. At dawn, the sea is strewn with flotsam, bits of torn sail, a half-burnt oar, a bloody hat, but Crowley is nowhere to be found. His ships, 3, maybe 4, have vanished into the labyrinth of islands. The Navy cutters limp back, hulls splintered but crews intact. The prisoners, shaken by the noise and chaos, finally begin to talk. The youngest claims, "Crowley knew you'd come. He's got spies, shorefolk, traders, even Navy men." Johnson listens, then asks, "Where would you go if you were Crowley?" The boy hesitates. Then, the Blue Hole. No one dares follow him there. The Blue Hole is a legendary spot, a round lagoon in the middle of Andros, surrounded by coral and only accessible at high tide. Pirates whisper it's haunted, that ships sink there, never to return. Johnson scoffs at the ghost stories but takes the tip seriously. The Resolute sets out, hugging the coastline, eyes peeled for signs of life. The crew is exhausted, tempers frayed, but determination runs high. For the first time, you sense the hunters have the scent, and Crowley knows it. 2 nights later, the Resolute sights a plume of smoke at dawn, a small campfire on the far edge of the lagoon, barely visible in the morning mist. Johnson orders silence, and the ship glides in, oars muffled with rags, the sailors tense, hands on muskets, every creak of wood a thunderclap in your chest. You land on the beach, boots sinking in soft sand, the air thick with brine and blooming mangrove. The campfire is out, but the marks are fresh. Footprints, the remains of a meal, a bit of tar-smeared rope. No sign of Crowley, but he was here. Johnson searches the shore, calling softly for his men to keep close. You find a scrap of canvas tied in a peculiar knot, Navy style, not pirate. Another sign Crowley hasn't forgotten his old training. Suddenly, a shot rings out from the brush. Chaos erupts. You duck, heart in your throat, as Marines return fire. It's a skirmish, brief and bloody, but by the end, 2 pirates are dead, and 1 badly wounded surrenders. Dragged back to the Resolute. The man gasps. He's gone. Took the longboat, North Channel. He's burning his own ships. And as the sun rises, you see black smoke on the horizon. Johnson doesn't hesitate. He orders pursuit at once, leaving a small party to guard the lagoon and signal the rest of the fleet. The chase is on. The final hours of daylight are a blur of shouted orders, billowing canvas, and desperate hope. The Resolute pushes hard, her timbers creaking, every man on edge. At dusk you round a point and see them, 2 pirate sloops, both ablaze, drifting in the current, a funeral pyre and a distraction. But Johnson isn't fooled. He's escaping in the shadow, he shouts. "Find the 3rd ship." Your lookout spots her, a black sloop, low in the water, sails barely catching the last light. The chase begins in earnest. Navy against pirate, a desperate race through reefs and shoals, as darkness swallows the sea. You feel the cold sweat of fear and the hot surge of adrenaline. One wrong turn means disaster. One lucky shot could end the chase for good. As night falls, you glimpse the glint of Crowley's silver-tipped cane at the helm, waving mockingly as his sloop slides out of range, hugging the dark shoreline. For now, he's still free, but the Navy's not far behind. You return to the Resolute's deck, lungs burning, skin salt-crusted, and heart pounding with the certainty that the game is not over. Somewhere out there, in the black water, the ghost ships wait. Dawn rises yellow and bruised above the Bahamas. The crew of the Resolute is running on stubbornness and the dregs of adrenaline, every muscle aching, every eye stinging from salt and sleeplessness. Johnson stands at the prow, face blank and lips thin, hands white-knuckled on the rail as he scans for any sign of Crowley's escape. For all the tension, there's a crackling current of excitement at last. You're not chasing shadows. The pirates are flesh and blood, their tricks exposed, their leader nearly within reach. But now comes the most dangerous game. Pursuit through reef-strewn channels, where the water runs bright turquoise by day and black as pitch by night, and a single misstep can mean a splintered hull and a watery grave. You're given a turn in the bow lookout, eyes peeled for every swirl in the water, every suspicious shape. The charts are old, the reefs are always shifting, and nobody trusts the depth soundings after last night's close call. The junior officers grumble, the Marines nurse bruises and cuts, and even the youngest powder monkeys are grimly alert, knowing full well that pirates cornered are pirates at their most dangerous. Crowley's sloop, always just out of range, plays a cruel game. By day, you spot her sails patched in grey, hugging the lee of the islands, dodging behind spits of mangrove and sudden bursts of shoal. By night, she vanishes, and the Resolute must slow for fear of running aground in the dark. You can feel the frustration mounting in Johnson. Every hour lost is a chance for Crowley to slip away and vanish, to resume his haunting of the trade lanes. But Johnson is nothing if not clever. He stations cutters at the mouth of every channel he suspects Crowley might use, signals the other Navy sloops with a new system of lantern flashes. Blue, white, blue, never twice the same pattern, and never lets the crew grow idle. The Resolute's decks are alive with activity, sails trimmed, ropes checked, guns cleaned and primed, lookouts doubled and redoubled. The days pass in a blur of sweat, salt and suspense. Sometimes you almost forget what's at stake, lulled by the slap of waves against the hull and the endless sun overhead. But every time the crew relaxes, there's a new alarm, a false sail on the horizon, a glimpse of black hull sliding behind a stand of coconut palms, the sudden stink of burning tar from a hidden cove. One evening, as the last orange light bleeds from the sky, you catch the sound of distant musket fire, a sharp crackle that echoes over the water, followed by a column of black smoke rising above the trees. Johnson's face darkens. He's burning another ship, he growls, or making us think he is. Ready the boats. You go over the side with the first boarding party, rowing hard for a shallow inlet marked by broken coral and the wreckage of some poor merchantman's gig. The air is thick with smoke and the sickly sweet reek of burning pitch. You beach the boat in knee-deep water, pistols drawn, heart pounding. The scene ashore is chaos, a smouldering sloop, mostly empty, rocking on the tide as flames lick at her stern, a scatter of barrels and rope along the sand, and behind it all the faint tracks of hurried feet vanishing into the undergrowth. The Marines fan out, nervous as cats. You follow the tracks as far as a copse of palms, where you find a broken crate, its contents spilled, Navy-issue biscuits, a bottle of cheap rum, and a handful of blackened rags. The pirates, it seems, are running low on everything, except audacity. You regroup on the beach, where Johnson listens to every report weighing each new detail. He is piecing together Crowley's tactics, always one step ahead, always ready with a trick. The burning sloop, he decides, was a decoy. Crowley's real escape is by night, in the narrowest, most treacherous channel he can find. That night, the Resolute anchors in a shallow bay, surrounded by breakers and reefs. The crew is jumpy. Every splash in the darkness could be a pirate swimmer, every creak a boarding party slipping over the side. You sleep with your musket across your chest, if you sleep at all. At midnight, the lookout shouts, a shadow moving between two rocks. Johnson is on deck in seconds, ordering quiet. You strain your eyes into the blackness, seeing nothing but the faint gleam of starlight on water. Then, with a ghostly suddenness, a lantern flickers to life among the mangroves. Blue, white, blue. A Navy signal. You blink in confusion. Surely no one from your own ship would be signaling out here. Johnson swears softly. That's Crowley's doing. He's mimicking our codes. Suddenly, all hell breaks loose. The Marines spot a small boat slipping away from the far side of the inlet. The Navy cutters give chase. Oars flash. You scramble to your feet, sprinting for the launch, and within minutes you're careening through the narrow, twisting channel, the scent of wet mud and night-blooming flowers thick in your nostrils. The chase is wild, desperate. The pirate's longboat skims the shallows, barely missing submerged rocks. Your oarsmen grunt and curse, muscles straining. Bullets crack overhead, sending up little spouts of water. For a moment, you glimpse Crowley himself at the helm, hair plastered to his skull, face twisted in a grin. Then, with a final burst of speed, his boat slips through a gap barely wider than a man's shoulders, too narrow for your cutter. You slam to a halt, breathless and furious. as the pirates disappear into the night. You return to the Resolute before dawn, head hung low, body aching, but Johnson is not defeated. He's running out of tricks, he tells the assembled crew. We're tightening the noose. He can't escape forever. The next days are a war of attrition. You pursue Crowley through every creek and channel, every patch of open water. The crew is exhausted, but there's a fierce determination now. Nobody wants to be remembered as the man who let the ghost pirates get away. You catch glimpses of Crowley's fleet, dwindling now, down to 2 battered sloops and a handful of desperate men. One sloop is abandoned on a sandbar, its crew gone, its hold empty. Another is found half sunk in a cove, a crude message scrawled on her deck. Better the devil's luck than the king's gold. At last you corner Crowley on a sandspit at the edge of Andros Island. His men, hungry and wounded, make a stand behind upturned boats and sandbags, firing wildly as the Navy Marines storm the beach. The fighting is vicious but brief. The pirates are outnumbered, outgunned, and out of hope. You rush forward heart-hammering and find Crowley himself at the centre, cutlass in one hand, silver-tipped cane in the other. His eyes find Johnson's. There's a moment, long, silent, electric, where neither man moves. Then Crowley lowers his weapon, tossing it into the sand. It was a good chase, Arthur, he says, voice hoarse. But it's over. Johnson nods, face as hard as iron. Aye, Crowley, it's over. You help tie the prisoner's hands, your own shaking from relief and exhaustion. The Navy ships signal victory, blue, white, blue, and for the first time in weeks the sun seems warm and friendly on your back. But even as Crowley is led away, you sense the story isn't quite finished. There are rumours, always rumours, of a ghost ship still drifting somewhere off Tortuga, black sails catching the moon, watching, waiting. You hope you never see her again, but you know the sea. Ghosts have a way of coming back. The moment the Navy's blue, white, blue lanterns flicker triumph along the shore, you feel the tension that's been gripping your body for weeks begin to uncoil. The battle for the sandspit is done, and the notorious Crowley Ghostmaker, Navy turncoat, pirate king of the shadow ships, has finally been captured. There is a sense of victory in the salt-heavy air. Yet as the Resolute and her battered companions take stock of their prisoners and wounded, you realize this is not a triumph sung with drums and trumpets. It's the ragged, haunted quiet of survivors, staring at the sunrise and wondering what comes next. The aftermath is messy, as always. The captured pirates, 30-odd men in all, scraped raw by coral and exhaustion, are herded together on the beach. Some curse and spit, but most slump in the sand, too drained to protest as Marines bind their wrists with tarred rope. A few, trembling with fever or shock, barely notice when a Navy surgeon checks their wounds. It's an ugly, necessary business, and you work through it on legs like wood, bloodshot eyes squinting against the rising glare. Crowley, for his part, keeps a cold dignity. He stands apart from his men, a little taller, a little leaner, the cut on his cheek dark against his salt-streaked skin. When Johnson approaches, Crowley manages a twisted smile. "You never did like to lose, Arthur," he says softly. Johnson's reply is careful but sharp. "And you never learned to quit while you were ahead." There's an old history between these men, old wounds and betrayals that you only glimpse in the spaces between words. The crew senses it too. Even the Marines are quieter when those two pass by, as if afraid to spark something that might explode. With the prisoners secured and the dead buried, pirate and Navy alike, laid side by side on the same stretch of white sand, attention turns to the remaining ships. The 2 surviving pirate sloops, battered but still afloat, are claimed as prizes. The Navy sailors strip them of everything useful. Anchors, sails, even the last scraps of tar and rope. Anything too heavy or cursed is tossed overboard with a superstitious prayer. You help search the pirate flagship, half expecting to find hidden treasures or more ghostly tricks. Instead, you discover only the meager spoils of desperate men. Barrels of mouldy hardtack, a locked chest full of worthless coins, a ledger scrawled with false names, and crude sketches. In Crowley's cramped cabin, you find the real prize, a bundle of Navy charts, marked with secret routes through the islands, and a journal written in a tight, furious hand. Johnson claims these at once, evidence for the Admiralty and perhaps the only record of how Crowley turned a handful of fishing boats into a fleet of vanishing terrors. Before leaving the sand spit, the Navy holds a brief, somber ceremony. The wounded are tended, the dead are given what rights they can manage, and the pirate prisoners are marched aboard the Navy cutters for transport back to Port Royal. Crowley is the last aboard. He pauses at the water's edge, looking back at the burning remains of his old world. You catch his gaze, a flicker of regret, a hint of pride, maybe even relief. On the voyage back, the crew of the Resolute tries to shake off weeks of anxiety. Old routines slowly return, hammocks strung, decks scrubbed, watches changed at regular intervals, but it's a haunted kind of peace. Even in victory, sailors keep a wary eye on the horizon, jumping at every shadow that moves across the moonlit water. The prisoners are kept below, guarded by double sentries. Most are sullen, but not all. One night, as you pass by the makeshift brig, you hear two young pirates whispering about the curse, how every crewman who ever dressed in black and smeared his face with Crowley's tar is doomed to see the ghost ships forever, even in their dreams. You laugh it off, but you find yourself watching the sea more often, flinching at every strange ripple or floating branch. As for Crowley, Johnson keeps him close. Each day, the captain questions his former rival about every trick, every false signal, every hiding place. Sometimes they talk quietly, almost like old friends. Sometimes their voices rise in anger. You wonder if Johnson is trying to save Crowley's soul, or just wring the last drops of usefulness from a broken legend. The weather is merciful on the return. The wind blows steady, the sun shines, and the Resolute reaches Port Royal in good time. As you enter the harbour, the crew lines the rails. Islanders stare and point. Word has spread fast. A crowd gathers at the quay to gawk at the prisoners and jeer at the fallen pirates. The governor himself boards the Resolute to receive Johnson's report. He listens in silence as Johnson details the events, the disappearances, the ghost tactics, the capture at Andros. Crowley is brought before him, head high despite the chains at his wrists. The governor eyes him for a long moment, then simply nods, gesturing to the guards. The pirates are marched through the streets to the town jail. Some locals cheer, others spit. A few women weep for sons lost on both sides. The crew of the Resolute is paraded as heroes, though the reward is mostly a night off and an extra ration of rum. For all the celebration, there's little sense of joy. Too many ghosts trail in the wake of the victory. Over the next days, Port Royal settles back into its uneasy rhythms. The Navy repairs the battered sloops and sells what can't be salvaged. Merchants return, cautiously, to the trade lanes. Superstitious tales of the ghost pirate fade to a dull whisper, replaced by fresh gossip about French threats, Spanish gold, and the price of sugar. You expect Johnson to be summoned home for accolades, but instead he remains, overseeing every detail of the aftermath. He interviews every prisoner, questions every pilot and lookout who played a part, and compiles a report so exhaustive it fills a chest. It's the details that save lives, he tells you quietly. Every rumor, every lie, every grain of truth. He even visits Crowley in his cell, some nights for hours on end. You never learn what they say, but you sometimes catch the shadow of a smile, bitter and resigned, on Crowley's face as Johnson leaves. You try to return to old habits, helping with repairs, sharing stories in the dockside tavern, sleeping a little longer now that the nightmares have dulled, but something has changed. You feel older, harder, a little less willing to believe in ghosts, but far more wary of the men who pretend to be them. One afternoon, as you're scrubbing decks, a group of Navy men gather near the quay. There's a commotion. Word that a merchant ship limped in from Tortuga, her crew ashen and trembling. They claim to have seen a black-hulled brig drifting in the night. Sails tattered, lanterns dead, no sign of crew. The rumors start up all over again. Has Crowley escaped? Are there more ghost pirates waiting to haunt the sea? Johnson smiles grimly when he hears. Let them talk, he says. Better fear than foolishness. For all the careful work, for all the practical answers, the sea keeps her mysteries. And you, who have hunted ghosts and found only men, never quite stop looking over your shoulder at dusk, wondering if the real ghost ship is still out there, watching, waiting, drifting on the tide. Port Royal simmers in the humid summer of 1720. The town itself part celebration, part suspicion. The Royal Navy's great victory against Crowley's ghost fleet, becomes the talk of every tavern and church. The merchants toast the end of piracy, at least for now, and Navy officers are welcomed at every table, pressed for stories of the hunt. You find yourself asked, again and again, to recount what it was like, the moonless chases, the tar-painted hulls, the night you first saw a ship appear out of nothing. Some believe every word, others just want to be scared before bed. Yet beneath the bravado, fear still lingers. The harbours are busy by day, but after sunset shutters close early and even the most hard-bitten sailors eye the horizon uneasily. You catch whispers at the fish market, in the pews, outside the counting house, about a curse left behind, about shadows in the mist, and a black ship that slips from bay to bay. Every now and then, a merchantman will limp into port with a wild-eyed crew, swearing they saw lanterns bobbing in the surf, or heard a woman's voice singing on the wind. Most laugh it off, but some don't. For the Resolute and her crew, there's little time to dwell on ghosts. The days after Crowley's capture are a storm of bureaucracy. Johnson and his officers endure endless interviews, making their statements before the Governor's Council, local justices, even a pair of fussy clerks dispatched from Kingston to take proper records for London. You spend hours going over old logs, repairing hulls and readying the battered Navy cutters for service. Whenever you think you've left the shadow of the ghost ships behind, some official or gossip or old fisherman drags you right back. The trial of Crowley and his men is a public affair, staged in the stone-walled courtroom above the main square. The pirates, pale and drawn, are marched in under heavy guard. The courtroom is packed. Merchants in silk, dock workers in bare feet, children straining for a glimpse of the ghost captain. Johnson testifies, every word measured and cool, laying out the facts, Crowley's navy past, the trick ships, the false signals, the pursuit and fight at Andros. Crowley defends himself with surprising poise. I was cast out by men who never sailed a storm, he says at one point. Eyes on the Governor. I only ever did what the sea taught me, to survive. There's a bitter, battered dignity to him, even in chains. He never denies what happened, but he never quite begs either. A few in the crowd, sailors who saw old Navy friends fall in the chaos of empire, watch him with something like respect. The verdict is never in doubt. The court sentences Crowley and his surviving lieutenants to hang. The younger pirates, pressed men and drifters, are given lighter sentences, some to the workhouse, some to forced Navy service. Johnson is praised for restoring honour to His Majesty's dominion, and given a letter of commendation, which you hear him mutter, is worth less than a dry biscuit unless it comes with shore leave. The morning of the execution, Port Royal is out in force. There's no celebration, just a kind of tense expectation like waiting for a hurricane to turn or strike. The pirates are led up the gallows steps, Crowley last of all, eyes on the sea, mouth set in a crooked line. When asked for final words, he says only, "The sea keeps her secrets." The trapdoor drops, the crowd exhales, and the ghost fleet is officially no more. But the story does not end at the gallows. That night, the wind shifts. It comes in hard off the water, blowing strange clouds over the moon. You and a few others from the Resolute gather on the docks, staring at the blackness beyond the breakwater. Some say it's nothing, just nerves, but one of the old sailors, a man named Big Tom, insists he saw a light bobbing just past the mouth of the harbour, right where the ghosts used to sail. "Don't be daft," someone mutters. "Ghosts don't row." Tom spits. "Maybe not, but I know what I saw." For weeks after, reports trickle in. A black sloop glimpsed at dawn off the Spanish town shoals, a woman's laughter echoing across the lagoon, fishermen who claim their nets come up tangled with shreds of tar-stained cloth. Every new sighting is debated fiercely at the taverns. Some blame smugglers or French spies, others claim it's the devil come to claim what's left. The legend is alive, growing larger with every retelling. Meanwhile, life pushes on. The Navy has to keep the trade lanes open. Johnson is given command of a new squadron, ordered to stamp out piracy wherever it breeds. You, along with many of your shipmates, are offered a choice: re-enlist and sail after the next threat, or take your meagre share of prize money and try your luck on shore. For many, the decision is easy. Rumours or not, a Navy cot is safer than a haunted hammock in a Port Royal boarding house. You sign on for another tour. It feels less like duty and more like chasing the last edge of the story, unwilling to let the sea's mysteries go unchallenged. Over the months, Port Royal settles. The governor boasts that piracy is finished in these waters. Trade resumes, but every sailor, navy or merchant, pirate or fisherman knows better than to believe it's ever truly done. One dusk, as you patrol the outer anchorage, a sudden squall blows in, thick with rain and the scent of something wild and ancient. The lookout swears he glimpses a black hull slipping between two islands. Just a trick of the light, maybe. But for an hour, nobody laughs and nobody sings. Sometimes when you lie awake in your hammock, rocked by the gentle creak of the Resolute at anchor, you imagine Crowley's last words, "The sea keeps her secrets." You picture him free again in some other world, or maybe just a story told over tankards, warning the next generation to respect the things they cannot see. And always, just beyond the light, you sense the shape of something old and clever, drifting through the darkness, untouched by gallows, unbroken by chains, waiting for the right moment to slip back into the world of men. A restless season settles over Port Royal and the turquoise sweep of the Caribbean, as if the ghost of Crowley's fleet lingers in every tide. Even with the pirate leader swinging from the gallows and the Navy's prize sloops anchored in the harbour, the town's spirit is uneasy. It isn't just the story of Crowley that refuses to die, it's the sense that out there in the channels, the sea is still hiding something. You carry on with Navy routine, though there's a new edge to every order. Johnson's squadron grows, 2 new brigs arrive from Kingston, their decks gleaming, their crews green and eager to prove themselves. Drills are constant, boarding practice, musket drills, signal lanterns, even nighttime silent rowing, just in case. "We may have hung the head," Johnson tells you during one bleary-eyed muster, "but piracy grows new hands faster than crabs can scuttle." Your own role shifts as well. Johnson recognizes that those who faced Crowley's tricks know what to watch for, so you become a kind of unofficial ghost catcher. At every new port, Nassau, Santiago, Montego Bay, he asks for your report. What are the men saying? Any rumors of black hulls or tar sails? Sometimes the stories are simple mischief, sometimes the ravings of too much grog, but now and then you hear a detail, a clever decoy, a vanished patrol, a sloop moving where no sloop should be, that chills your blood. The Resolute herself has changed, too. Once a ship known mostly for her age and stubborn captain, she's now spoken of in low, respectful tones. She chased the ghosts and won, the dockhands say, with a kind of reverence. But below decks, the crew is wary. The ship creaks at night in ways she never did before, and there are corners of shadow where you swear you can still smell burning tar. It isn't just sailors who feel the shift. Local merchants, once jubilant at the fall of Crowley, begin to whisper their fears again as the months pass. 2 sugar convoys are attacked near San Salvador. Clean, quick, and vanishing without a trace. A fishing fleet returns to Port Royal with 1 sloop missing. The survivors claim they saw her lights flicker out just before a black shadow swept across the bow. Superstitious dock workers begin to toss scraps of bread or coins into the water at dusk to pay off the ghosts. And then, at last, one evening, you find yourself summoned to the governor's house, a faded blue mansion with columns weathered by salt and sun. Johnson waits for you in the shade of a jacaranda tree, his uniform a bit more frayed, his beard a little more silver. "I want your opinion, lad," he says, voice low. "There are new reports, more ghost ships, but not Crowley's hand this time. The attacks are too wild, too reckless. Still, something about them, it feels familiar." He shows you a list of sightings, each one eerily similar to the old stories. Ships that seem to vanish into fog, sloops running dark, sails painted with mud and rags. One captain swears a longboat appeared from nowhere and nearly rammed him before dissolving into mist. Copycats, you suggest? Or something else, Johnson muses. Who knows what Crowley taught, or to whom? Maybe someone's trying to become the next legend. The next week is spent in pursuit of the new ghost fleet. The Navy's tactics are sharper now. Decoy ships run every night, small parties in cutters lurk behind every headland, and you drill the new sailors on the signs of a real pirate trick. A false lantern, a tarred hull, a muffled oar. Some nights you think you catch a glimpse, just a flicker, just a shadow. Sometimes nothing at all. The new pirates are bold, but not as cunning as Crowley. 2 are caught in the act. Their ships running aground while trying to dodge a navy cutter. Others are less lucky, vanished for real, lost in the shoals or the sudden storms that sweep these waters with little warning. Yet the stories don't stop. The sea keeps offering up new tales. A ship seen burning without sound, a voice on the wind, a pair of lights moving in ways no lantern ever could. It's not just the British who chase shadows now. The Spanish and French have their own ghost stories, and soon a Dutch squadron comes south. Curious about the disappearances, you meet officers in Nassau who talk of black hulls in the night, of crews who vanished without a cry. One Frenchman, a weary veteran with a scar across his brow, shares a bottle of brandy and whispers, "You think you've seen the end of it? None, mon ami." The sea never tells the same tale twice. Each time, the ghosts learn. There are practical changes too. Insurance rates for Caribbean crossing spike. Shipwrights start painting hulls with fresh white or green to stand out in moonlight. The Navy posts new signal codes every fortnight. Rumors of spyglass-proof sails circulate through the dockyards. Still, no system, no law, no man can banish the old unease. Sometimes you sit by the water, watching the sun set behind the battered Navy ships. It's a different world from the one you knew before Crowley's ghost fleet. You realize that while men can hang and ships can burn, legends are another matter entirely. The story of the ghost pirates has become a warning, a comfort and a challenge, proof that the sea, for all her maps and patrols, belongs to no one. On the rare days when the Resolute lies at anchor, and you have a moment to yourself, you walk the harbour with Big Tom, or another old hand. The talk always drifts back to Crowley, the real man, the legend, the shadow still seen in every misty dawn. "Do you believe he's really gone?" Tom asks one evening, his voice oddly gentle. You shrug, looking out at the blood-orange sunset. "Gone, maybe, but not forgotten." Tom spits into the water, a sailor's blessing against bad luck. That's the problem with ghosts. They don't need to come back. So long as you're looking for them, they're never really gone. And you nod, because you know it's true. Every time you scan the horizon and see a ship, every time the wind shifts and the lanterns flicker, you remember how it felt. The terror, the wonder, the possibility of something impossible lurking just out of reach. The Caribbean night closes in, gentle and relentless. The waves lap the shore, carrying secrets, carrying stories, carrying you forward to the next uncertain dawn. Autumn brings storms and sudden calms to the Caribbean. As if the very air cannot decide between violence and slumber, Port Royal's streets are slick with rain. But business surges, 100 ships come and go each week. The wharves packed with casks of sugar, barrels of rum, bales of tobacco and more news and gossip than the city's spires can hold. Still, beneath the clamour, the ghost ship story refuses to die. If anything, it spreads further with each visiting merchant, each passing Navy sloop, each fisherman's tall tale whispered over grog. You learn to recognize the look in a man's eyes before he speaks of such things. A glance over the shoulder, a lean in as if the water itself is listening, a tightening of the voice as he describes what he saw, or what he wants you to believe he saw. "Saw her last week off Pedro Bank," says a Scottish bosun, voice low, black as pitch, drifting sideways, not a soul aboard. "My cousin," a Kingston trader confides, swears she heard singing from the fog, and all the lanterns in her cabin blew out at once. You nod, you listen, sometimes you laugh, sometimes you shiver. Meanwhile, the Resolute and her growing squadron have become something of a floating legend themselves. New hands sign on with hopes of glory or out of fear. Either way, you are no longer the green sailor you once were. Every watch is vigilant. Every lookout knows to trust their eyes, not their nerves. There is a kind of pride in the way you and your shipmates stand at the rails, scanning the night, watching for tricks, for pirates, for ghosts. Johnson, too, is a changed man. The captain's hair grows a little greyer, his posture more rigid. Where once he barked orders with a smile, now he issues them with the flat calm of someone who has faced the impossible and survived. His private conversations with you become less about tactics and more about philosophy, the nature of fear, the power of rumour, the burden of command. One evening, as you both walk the quarterdeck under a sky heavy with thunderclouds, He asks, "What's worse? Do you think the real danger or the stories we tell about it? You consider your answer." "Sometimes the stories are all that's left after the danger passes, sir," he grunts. "Aye, and stories don't obey orders. Despite your efforts, piracy does not end." A new breed of raider emerges, half bandit, half showman, eager to claim the ghost mantle for themselves. These upstarts are bold, but lack Crowley's cunning. Their attacks are messier, more violent, less clever, but they strike terror nonetheless. The Navy chases them, sometimes catches them, sometimes does not. Yet there is one attack that stirs the old dread. It is a clear night, warm and breezy, and the Resolute is patrolling the straits between Cuba and Jamaica. You stand the midnight watch, eyelids heavy, when suddenly the lookout calls, "Sail, dead ahead." No lights. The deck erupts in silent activity. You race to your station, heart thumping. Through the glass you see her, a low black shape gliding across the moon's reflection. Sails limp, but somehow full, silent as ever. Johnson orders the signal. "Identify yourself." No answer. He tries again. Nothing. The Resolute closes the gap, moving slow, every cannon primed. For a breathless moment, the two ships drift side by side, close enough to see the streaks of tar, the battered rigging, the dark stains along the rail. But this time, the Ghost does not vanish. Instead, a volley of musket fire erupts from her deck. The Navy answers in kind, and chaos explodes. Grappling hooks fly, men scream. The clash of steel rings in the night. You find yourself swept up in the melee, pistol in hand, blade in the other, fighting for your life against men who fight like demons. Wild, desperate, but with a strange, almost religious fervor. When it is over, the Ghost is yours. Her captain, a gaunt, fever-eyed youth, surrenders, shouting, "Crowley's not dead. He sails with us in the storm." His crew, ragged and half-mad, mutter about visions, about voices in the night, about following a shadow through the reefs. You search the hold, half expecting to find Crowley himself, risen from the deep. Instead, you find a battered journal, its pages filled with rants and wild dreams. He calls us. He waits. We drift, and he finds us in fog. Johnson sighs. "They wanted to be legends," he says quietly, "but they just lost men." You help bring the prisoners aboard. The Resolute turns for Port Royal, sails heavy, crew silent. Some call it a victory. Others are not so sure. Rumors swirl even more feverishly. The new prisoners are paraded through the town. People gawk, jeer, some even weep. The governor orders more patrols. Merchants delay their voyages, citing unsettled waters. The insurance rates soar again. More Navy ships arrive. Yet still the legends persist. Black ships drifting, voices singing, storms that rise from nowhere and vanish just as quick. One evening, a fisherman, old, half-blind, half-deaf, tells a group of children by the quay, "There's always been ghosts here, long before Crowley. Sometimes they're just men, but sometimes when the sea is dark, there's something else. Best keep your lantern lit." You realize the story has slipped free of your hands, of Johnson's, of the Navy's. It belongs to the sea now, and to the people who sail it. Still, your life must go on. You repair rigging, patch sails, teach the new hands how to spot a painted hull in bad light. You laugh, drink, argue, sleep. Every night you dream of moonlit water and black shapes sliding through the mist, and every morning you wake with the same thought: the sea keeps her secrets. There comes a night when you find Johnson alone on the quarterdeck, staring out at the harbour. The wind is warm, the stars hidden behind thick cloud. He speaks without turning. Do you think we'll ever be rid of it? The fear, the legends, the ghosts? You answer honestly. No, sir. I think we just get used to them. He laughs softly. Hi, maybe that's the best we can do. You stand together in silence, the sounds of the harbour below, the endless ocean ahead. Somewhere, far out, where the water turns to ink, a ship's bell rings once, twice, 3 times. A signal, or perhaps just an echo. You know now that some ghosts are never exorcised, some are simply endured, and as the first rain of autumn falls, the old city of Port Royal turns in for the night. Shutters closed, lanterns lit, sailors dreaming of ghosts and gold. Pyro. Weeks roll by and the ghost stories grow richer, fatter, more outrageous in the telling. You can feel the city's pulse change with every tale. Sailors newly arrived from Boston or London come ashore already nervous, expecting black ships to slip up beside their bunks in the night, waiting for the voice of Crowley to echo in their dreams. Some refuse to join convoys unless they sail with the Resolute or her sister ships, the only vessels who've stared down the devil and lived to tell it. Others bring charms, saints' medals, lucky stones, old scraps of sailcloth to pin to the mast or knot around their wrists. For the Navy, the work is relentless. If anything, the legend of Crowley has made the real pirates bolder, each outdoing the last in hopes of being mistaken for a ghost and escaping pursuit. Disguises become more elaborate. Tarred sails, hulls daubed with river mud, even lanterns painted with blue glass to mimic the Navy's signals. Sometimes it works for a night or two, but Johnson's crews are sharp-eyed now. They've learnt the tricks. The difference between true silence and the hush of oars dip just under the surface. The subtle gleam of honest saltwater against the dull slick of river mud. Yet for every would-be ghost caught, another rumour takes its place. The Dutch lose a sugar galley outside Havana, and when she finally limps in, the survivors swear a black sloop passed through the convoy in the middle of a moonless squall, untouched, unseen. There and then gone. A Spanish captain claims a dead ship rammed him near San Salvador, leaving no mark but a trail of red paint and a song on the wind. Even the French admit to chasing shadows. A pair of war brigs dog a phantom fleet for 2 nights, only to discover they've been chasing the same derelict drifting in circles with a lantern tied to the mast. You've grown almost used to it, this half-fantasy world where pirates and phantoms share the same waters. Still, every real chase leaves your heart pounding. There are moments too many to count when your hands tremble over the boarding line, or your mouth goes dry as you peer into the dark, waiting for the enemy to blink first. In the mess, the old hands tell the new recruits, there's 2 things you need in these waters, a sharp blade and a sharper mind. Crowley's gone, but his ghost's teaching every fool to try his luck. Don't trust what you can't see, and don't turn your back on it, either. It's as much superstition as strategy now, but you've seen enough to know the difference is sometimes paper thin. On the Resolute, Johnson's leadership is sharper than ever. He keeps the crew drilled, rotating watches, testing signals, never letting anyone grow complacent. The men grumble, Navy work is never easy, but they trust him, now more than ever. You can see it in the way the deck quiets when he's at the rail, the way even the most seasoned old salt falls silent when he leans in to give orders. But you see the toll too. Johnson's hair is whiter, the lines at his eyes deeper. He writes letters by lantern light. Late into the night, his handwriting growing more crabbed with every week. Sometimes he calls you to his cabin, not for orders, but for stories. Tell me what you heard ashore, he'll say, and you share the latest rumours, the latest sighting, the latest theory about why the sea won't let Crowley rest. He always listens carefully, lips pursed, brow furrowed, as if looking for a pattern in the chaos. Port Royal society, such as it is, finds new life in the uncertainty. The governor hosts grand dinners, ostensibly to restore the people's confidence, but really to gossip about the latest haunting or Navy success. You're invited once, a rare treat. The room is all laughter and candlelight, but when the talk turns to the ghost fleet, the mood chills. Even the boldest merchant lowers his voice as if afraid the story might come in through the window. Outside town, in the villages and plantations, the legends take on new forms. Children play ghost pirates along the shore, building makeshift sloops out of driftwood and chasing each other with painted faces, chanting Crowley's name. Fishermen claim the best catch comes on foggy nights when the real ghosts are at sea. Preachers thunder against the dangers of superstition, warning that such talk invites disaster. Their flocks nod, then go right back to whispering over their evening stew. Still, the sea remains the sea, hungry, wild, full of wonders and terrors. Convoys come and go. Hurricanes threaten and pass. Ships disappear for ordinary reasons. Storm, fire, careless navigation. But each loss is now framed in the shadow of the ghost fleet. Insurers wring their hands. Admirals in London send more ships. More men, more instructions. Yet, for all their efforts, the old stories persist. One dusk, a fast cutter returns to port with a half-drowned man aboard. A Spaniard, raving in terror, convinced he's seen Crowley himself walking across the water. He's got no eyes, the man gasps. Only black holes where his face should be. He called to me, said the sea isn't finished. The doctors say it's sunstroke. The dock workers say it's a warning. As for you, your own dreams have grown more vivid. Sometimes you're chasing the black ship again, running through mist with no end, always just behind a silver-tipped cane that glimmers and winks, slipping out of reach. Other nights you dream of Johnson, older and older, his hair turning to sea foam, his eyes hard as anchor iron, always searching, never satisfied. Yet you keep going, because that's what sailors do. You keep the lanterns trimmed, the watches sharp. You join in the singing below decks, tell the newest hands just enough of the real story to scare them straight, and hope you never meet another captain as clever or as cursed as Crowley. As autumn rolls into winter, the patrols continue. The Navy's presence is stronger than ever, but so is the legend. On a foggy night you spot a light out by the reef. A single swaying lantern. You watch it, muscles tense, until dawn. When the sun rises, there's nothing there, but you know better than to laugh at your own caution. Johnson, for all his bluster, confides in you now and then. "We did what we could, lad," he says quietly one evening, as you both look out over the sleeping city. "Some things you just can't kill. You can only keep them in check. For a while." You nod. You understand. Some nights the line between sailor and ghost is thinner than a whisper, and somewhere far off, where the water turns from green to black, you feel certain that Crowley, legend or not, drifts on. As winter settles over the Caribbean, never quite cold, but sharp enough in the dawn air to sting your nose, the rhythm of sea and town changes. The rains come harder, storms roll in from the east, and every anchor chain sings a different note as the wind swings the ships in Port Royal's crowded harbour. And still, night after night, the stories spread. The ghost ship, black as pitch, is sighted near Montego Bay, or lurking in the Spanish Main, or gliding past the mouth of the Orinoco, always just out of reach. You find yourself growing superstitious, almost despite yourself. Once, you were a skeptic. Science and order, the Navy way, the way Johnson drilled it into you. But now, when you go below decks, you pause to touch the old carved figurehead, a battered woman in flowing robes, said to bring luck if you press your thumb to her foot. Some of the men knot bits of blue cloth into their bootlaces, others keep a pebble from the sand spit where Crowley was captured. A few Big Tom among them have taken to muttering a half-joking prayer to Our Lady of Vanished ships before every patrol. The Resolute keeps busy, patrolling the shoals and banks, escorting merchant convoys, landing marines at remote villages where rumours of pirate gatherings still linger. Johnson is as relentless as ever, insisting on clean decks, sharp lookouts, and twice-daily drills, but his manner has changed. He's grown thoughtful, sometimes caught gazing at the horizon, lost in memory. At times you'll find him staring at Crowley's old journal, its covers worn smooth from handling, as if searching for secrets in the captain's mad scrawl. One afternoon, word comes that a merchant galley, Spanish, fat with cocoa and indigo, has vanished off the coast of Hispaniola. Her last sighting, dusk, calm water, a thin line of fog rolling in from the north. When you make port at Kingston a week later, the docks are abuzz. They say she was taken by Crowley himself, back from the dead. The boy shouts wide-eyed, black sails, red eyes. Not a sound on deck. You laugh with the men, but inside you feel a shiver. You remember too well how easily a trick can become a truth, how quickly fear can reshape a story until even the most reasonable man looks twice at a shadow. Johnson convenes his officers that evening. "Every new ghost is just another pirate hoping to buy himself a reputation," he says, voice gruff but low. "We chase the living, not the dead, and if the stories help us keep men wary and convoys close, let them spread." Still, after the meeting you see him run his fingers along the window frame, checking for the old warded nail he hammered there after Crowley's capture. Your next patrol is a long one, around Cuba, up to the Bahamas, then down to Cartagena, and back. At every port, the story is waiting, Men who've seen things, women who've heard singing on the wind, a fisherman who claims he pulled a barnacled piece of black-painted hull from the sea. Each tale is different, but all circle the same theme. The sea's secrets will not die. During a stormy stopover at Nassau, you're called to a meeting with a Dutch captain, a burly, bearded man who carries himself like he's never been frightened by anything smaller than a hurricane. He asks about the ghost fleet, about Crowley, about what really happened that summer off Andros. "I've chased many shadows," he says, tapping his pipe on the table, "but never one so clever as your Crowley. If he's gone, the sea's worse for it. If he's still out there, God help us all." You find yourself wondering, which is worse, a world with Crowley in it, or a world haunted forever by the possibility? The Resolute returns to Port Royal in time for the governor's New Year's feast. It's a grand affair. Tables sag under roasted pork and fruits, the room alive with the voices of every merchant, navyman and official in the colony. The band plays, the wine flows, and for a while it seems as though fear and superstition have been banished with the old year. But then, as the bell strikes midnight, the lights flicker, a gust of wind rattles the shutters, and in the hush that follows, someone sings, soft and high, the chorus of an old pirate shanty. "Hoist up the black, let her drift through the night. Crowley's on deck, and the moon's burning bright." Some laugh, others frown, but the spell is broken. The sea, it seems, is never far away. You leave the party early. Walking the quiet lanes back to the harbour, Port Royal feels different in the dark. Less a city and more a collection of secrets strung out along the water. Lanterns sway in the breeze, casting long shadows across the stones. You pause at the dock, looking out at the anchored ships, the black water, the distant twinkle of a fisherman's lamp. It's then you hear it, a faint creaking, the slap of a hull against the pier. A soft voice, could be the wind, could be a memory singing just out of reach. You stand there a long time, trying to decide whether to laugh, to run or to listen. Back on board the Resolute, you climb to the deck for the midnight watch. The sky is clear, the stars sharp, but the horizon remains stubbornly dark. You think of all the stories of Crowley, of the ghosts, of the living men who would kill for a legend, and you realize, with a kind of peace, that you are part of the story now. Your footsteps join those of 1,000 sailors before you, all chasing and being chased by what they can never quite catch. The days slip by. More ships come and go, more tales are told. Sometimes you wonder if you will ever leave these waters, or if you'd even want to. The sea has claimed you, body and soul, and though you may never see another ghost ship, you know you will always look for one. Sometimes, in the quiet just before dawn, you remember Crowley's last words. The sea keeps her secrets. You whisper them to yourself, a charm, a warning, a promise. And somewhere far beyond the reach of lantern or law, the ghost fleet drifts on, half memory, half myth, all the more real for never quite appearing when called. The year rolls on, and while the tales of the ghost fleet now seem woven into the very soul of the Caribbean, life on the Resolute returns to a rough sort of normal. The ship is your world, and you know every scar in her planks, every whistle of wind through her rigging, every night sound that might once have been a threat, but now is simply the background music of a sailor's life. Even so, in this new normal, the edge never quite dulls. Every patrol, every moonless night, every strange light on the horizon carries a little whisper of Crowley's legend. The Navy's campaign continues. The Admiralty, eager to show London that order reigns in these lucrative waters, sends more ships, some fresh from the dockyards, others old men of war, with hulls patched so many times you joke that the only thing holding them together is tradition and salt. Johnson's squadron is the most seasoned. His reputation has grown almost as legendary as Crowley's once was. Other captains come to consult him, seeking advice on reading signals, spotting fakes, interpreting the sea's many moods. He is generous but unsentimental. Keep your eyes open, don't chase what you can't see, and never assume a legend won't fire back. Patrol duty has become a science. The squadron's cutters sweep the coastlines by day, poking into every mangrove and cove, searching for signs of new pirate nests. By night, the larger ships form a net around convoys, signal lanterns ready, gunners at their stations, watches doubled and then doubled again. The crew grumbles at the endless hours but works with a professionalism born from real fear and hard-earned pride. On a muggy evening near the end of February, your watch spots a sloop riding low and dark at the mouth of a shallow bay. The lookout's call is low, almost apologetic. He too is wary of sounding the alarm for nothing. Johnson comes on deck, glass to his eye, studying the ship. No lights, no flag, he mutters. She's drifting, not anchored. Might be a derelict or a trap. The Resolute closes carefully. The Marines are roused, muskets primed. You're at your post by the main gun, nerves prickling. As you draw alongside, the mystery sloop bumps gently against the hull. The sound a hollow, wooden knock that seems to echo far too loud in the night. A boarding party is sent over. You watch them scramble across, lanterns held high, shadows leaping. The report comes back. The ship is empty. Not stripped, not looted, just empty. The sails are down, lines cut, hatches closed but unlocked. Below decks, nothing but a few barrels of fresh water, some wormy hardtack, and most chilling, a child's wooden doll, nailed to the mainmast. It's not the first abandoned ship you've found, but something about this one feels wrong. The men are uneasy. One swears he heard footsteps on the deck while they searched the hold. Another claims he saw a pale hand vanish into the darkness just as he entered the forecastle. Johnson shrugs off the worst of it, but you see the set of his jaw, the white grip on his sword hilt. They tow the sloop back to Port Royal. The local magistrate inspects her and shrugs, declaring it a merchantman lost to pirates. Nothing more, but the crew whispers. The children in town dare each other to climb aboard at low tide, looking for signs of Crowley or his cursed men. One boy is found weeping in the forecastle, convinced he saw Crowley's ghost curled up on a coil of rope, muttering about the deep. A new wave of rumours spreads. Now the story goes that Crowley's spirit has left the sea and begun stalking the very ships that brought about his end. Sailors refuse to bunk in certain corners, mutter prayers over their food, and swap charms and talismans with increasing urgency. More than once you're asked to show your scar, a thin line across your forearm from that first real boarding years ago, because it's said a mark from Crowley's campaign will ward off his revenge. Through it all, Johnson keeps the squadron running. His faith is unshakable, or so it seems. But late one night, after a hard rain, you find him on the quarterdeck, staring out at the black line of the horizon, Crowley's battered journal in hand. The moon is full, bathing the deck in ghostly light. He looks up as you approach. "Could you ever imagine, lad," he says quietly, "that one man's tricks and stories could so change the course of 1,000 lives?" You shake your head. "I thought we'd just be chasing pirates, sir, not legends." He laughs softly, the sound more weary than amused. "That's the thing, isn't it? Every legend starts with a man, and every man hopes to become a legend, if only to keep from being forgotten." He closes the journal. Maybe that's what Crowley wanted in the end. Maybe that's what all sailors want, after all. He heads below, leaving you alone with the sea and the moonlight. You lean on the rail, breathing the salt air, and wonder just how many more ships will chase the ghost fleet, and how many more sailors will find themselves lost in the shadow of Crowley's story. Port Royal remains a crossroads of the world. Ships come in with fresh rumours every week. A Portuguese barque reports being stalked by a shadow with red sails off St. Kitts. A British merchantman claims her captain vanished without a trace, leaving only a silver-tipped cane beside the helm. At night you hear the bells ring from the cathedral and the laughter from the taverns, but beneath it all is the steady, relentless song of the sea, the song filled with longing and loss and secrets never told. One morning, a French frigate limps in, hull battered, rigging torn. Her captain is tight-lipped but eventually confides to Johnson that they were chased for hours by a ship with no name, no flag, only a voice that sang in the wind. They fired warning shots. The ship vanished. He looks haunted, eyes sunken, hands shaking as he tries to light his pipe. The governor asks for another grand show of force. More convoys, more navy patrols. The local press prints lurid tales of the haunting of the Windward Passage. But life goes on. Ships sail, cargo is bought and sold, children are born, men die at sea, or in the narrow streets of town, and the legend of Crowley and his ghost fleet becomes just one more thread in the endless tapestry of island life. Yet for those of you who were there, who saw the tricks and the terror, the legend never fades completely. You meet an old comrade in the market one day. one who fought at Andros, who saw the burning sloops and Crowley's defiant smile as the Navy closed it. He greets you with a clap on the shoulder, his laughter rich but his eyes clouded with memory. You ever think we'll see the like again? He asks. You shake your head, but you both know the answer. Somewhere, someday, another ghost will rise. As night falls and the lamps are lit, you settle into your hammock and close your eyes, listening to the familiar chorus of ship and sea, heart and memory. The story continues. The sea, after all, is patient, and she keeps her secrets well. As the trade winds shift into the spring, bringing with them new ships and new faces, Port Royal breathes in rhythm with the rest of the Caribbean. The city thrives on stories on sugar and rum, on ships and sails, but most of all on rumour and legend. The tale of Crowley and the Ghost Fleet has become part of the city's living memory, as real to some as the sunrise and as changeable as the tides. It's a season of arrivals and departures. You watch as merchant ships from London and Lisbon, New York and Cartagena dock and unload, their crews swapping the latest news before moving on. The dockside taverns are always full. Captains, quartermasters, stevedores, women in bright shawls, all weaving their own versions of the ghost ship story. A dozen men claim to have faced Crowley. Twice as many swear they saw his black sloop vanish on a foggy night. You learn that a good story is worth its weight in coin, especially when it can frighten a rival or lure a fool into an ill-advised bet. Your days are filled with routine, rigging checks, musket practice, and the never-ending parade of watch rotations. Johnson keeps the Resolute sharp, her decks holystoned and her brass polished to a shine, as if daring the next ghost or pirate to test her strength. But the ship is older now. You are older too. You catch your reflection in a pane of lantern glass and notice the salt flecks in your hair, the calluses on your hands. The sea has marked you as surely as it marked Crowley. A new captain comes aboard, young, ambitious, all spit and polish. He's eager to stamp out the last traces of fear among the men. Superstition, he sneers, is the true enemy. But at night you hear him bolt his cabin door, and more than once you find him pacing the deck, watching the water as if expecting something to rise from its depths. One humid afternoon, a strange ship is sighted off the east point. A brig with patched sails and a faded flag no one recognizes. The Resolute and another sloop move to intercept. Johnson, back in command for the patrol, orders all hands to stations. The crew moves with the kind of alert calm that only comes from long experience. You watch the mystery ship through the spyglass, noting her awkward motion on the waves. No guns visible, no sign of life on deck. You close, hailing in 3 languages, but receive only silence. Finally, Johnson orders a boarding party. You're among them, musket loaded, boots slick with old salt. You climb aboard, heart thumping, and find only emptiness, torn canvas, the remnants of a logbook, and oddly, the faint scent of pipe smoke in the captain's quarters. Someone mutters, "It's a ghost ship," half as a joke, half in dread. But it's just another derelict, another empty hull, claimed by the sea. You tow her into port, where she is stripped for timber and soon forgotten. Still, the men are uneasy for days afterward. Some swear they saw footprints on the deck that vanished as they watched. Back ashore, you visit Big Tom at the tavern. The old sailor is fatter, slower, but his eyes are bright with gossip. He claps you on the back, orders you a drink, and leans close. You ever think about leaving it behind? He asks. The ghosts, the sea, all this? You shake your head. And do what? Farm sugar? Haul barrels for a merchant? No, Tom. The sea's in my blood now. He laughs, teeth flashing. Aye, and ghosts too. Life carries on, and so does the legend. The courts try another batch of pirates. A ragged crew, caught looting a sugar bark near Nassau. The men claim innocence, swearing they were chasing the real ghost fleet. The magistrate is unmoved. They're sentenced to labour, and the judge warns against foolish tales that lead honest men astray. But tales are harder to stamp out than pirates. That night, a fresh storm rolls in, hammering the harbour with rain and thunder. Lanterns flicker in the wind, and you see the shapes of ships rocking at anchor, their masts like skeleton fingers clawing at the sky. Someone begins singing softly, an old ballad about Crowley's cane and the ship with no name. You find yourself humming along, half aware, as if the song has always been there, just waiting to be remembered. In the days that follow, more strange sights are reported. A merchantman out of Havana passes a black sloop drifting under bare poles. A Navy patrol returns shaken, claiming to have exchanged signals with an invisible ship in the mist. A fisherman insists he saw a pale figure standing on the reef at dawn, waving a lantern over the water. You know better than most that not every story is true, yet you've seen enough, heard enough, felt enough in the dark hours to keep your knife sharp and your mind sharper. Johnson sometimes joins you on watch, and the two of you swap quiet memories of the siege at Andros, the burning sloops, the pale moonlight over the haunted lagoon. Neither of you speaks Crowley's name aloud, but both feel the shape of his story in the space between sentences. One evening, as you patrol the outer harbour in a cutter, the sky bruises purple and gold. The wind is gentle, the water is glass. Then, as the last light fades, you see a shape slip across the horizon, low, dark and silent. You raise the glass, but it's already gone. Your mate nudges you, grinning nervously. Chasing ghosts again? You smile, and for a moment you're not sure if you're joking. Always. As spring ripens, the legend shifts once more. Children draw pictures of Crowley's ship in the sand, then stomp them away with bare feet. Merchants pay a little extra for convoys, and the Navy maintains its silent, unending vigil. You, like all sailors, dream of other lands, other seas, but always wake with the taste of salt and the sound of a bell ringing somewhere far away. You realize then that the legend of the Ghost Fleet is not just about Crowley, or pirates, or even the sea itself. It's about all the things men fear and hope for. The unknown, the unseen, the promise that life might be more than rations and orders, that the night could hold a wonder or a terror greater than anything you've yet known. Sometimes you stand at the prow of the Resolute, the wind in your hair, eyes fixed on the empty blue horizon. You imagine the black sloop slipping through the mist, silent and eternal, always just beyond the reach of lore and memory. And sometimes, late at night, you whisper to the water, "Keep your secrets, Crowley. We'll keep watch, because in the end, it's not about defeating ghosts, it's about living with them." By midsummer, Port Royal is humming with its usual noisy optimism. All bright colours and heat-shimmered air, but for those who spend their lives at sea, an invisible tension persists. The sugar ships and slavers, the mail packets and coastal traders, they come and go, their business greasing the city's economy. Yet behind the laughter and music is a watchfulness that only sailors and old Navy men seem to notice. You see it in the way crewmen double-check the lines before casting off at dusk, in the muttered blessings as anchors are raised, in the quick glances over the rail each time a bank of mist rolls in off the bay. On board the Resolute, a strange quiet unity has settled. Men who once grumbled about extra watches now stand them willingly. Nobody wants to be the one who misses the return of the Ghost Fleet. You find yourself looking out over the water, half expecting to glimpse that infamous black sloop or the silver tip of Crowley's cane. Sometimes, late at night, you almost hope you will, if only for the certainty that comes with facing a real enemy, instead of an endless parade of rumours and the anxieties of peacetime. A month after the empty sloop incident, the Admiralty orders a grand review. The entire squadron, along with half the merchant fleet in port, is to assemble for a ceremonial parade, a show of strength, meant as much for the colonies as for the pirates who might still be lurking beyond the reefs. The preparations are exhaustive. The ships are scrubbed, flags mended, uniforms pressed until they're stiff as boards. Johnson, now greyer and more gaunt, drills his men harder than ever, determined that the Resolute should lead the line in perfect form. The day of the parade dawns clear and blinding, the air already thick with heat and the scent of tar. From your place at the rails, you watch a forest of masts sway in the harbour, their rigging strung with pennants, and their decks crowded with visitors. Local officials, wealthy planters, Navy officers from half the empire. The cannon salutes echo across the bay, rolling out toward the open sea. Yet for all the celebration, there is an edge beneath the spectacle. You catch nervous glances among the sailors. The memory of last year's ghosts is too fresh. When the governor gives his speech, lauding the Navy for driving the pirates from our waters, you see a few grins, but just as many skeptical stares. More than one officer mutters that it's tempting fate to declare victory, when the wind could shift at any moment. After the parade, the ships disperse. The Resolute resumes her patrols, but the mood has changed. The men are restless, as if waiting for something trouble perhaps, or another mystery. Even Johnson, so long the bulwark of order, seems changed. At mess, he speaks little, his gaze distant, as if he's listening for some signal only he can hear. The weeks pass, and life returns to its unsteady normal. Yet the stories of the Ghost Fleet, rather than fading, seem to multiply. A convoy out of Barbados reports being followed for 2 days by a dark ship with no lights, no flag, no crew seen. The same words used 100 times before, but every time given new urgency. A fishing boat disappears off the coast of Jamaica, and when its wreck is found days later, the only sign of life is a single boot on the deck and a lantern, still burning. You spend long hours listening to these tales, cataloguing them in your mind. Some are easily explained. The squall here, a lazy lookout there, a pirate eager for fame and too clever by half. Others defy reason. A merchantman comes in with her captain raving that he saw Crowley himself, standing on the water, beckoning with his cane. He said my name, the man insists, and I'll never sleep again. The doctor prescribes laudanum and rest. You prescribe an extra ration of rum and a week ashore. Through it all, you keep doing your job, teaching the green hands to tell the difference between real danger and imagined, maintaining discipline, making sure the lanterns are trimmed and the muskets clean. You find solace in the routine, the crack of canvas in a sudden squall, the slow march of the stars overhead, the faint creak of the hull as the ship rides at anchor. Sometimes you catch yourself scanning the horizon and wonder whether you're hoping for trouble or just afraid of its absence. One steamy afternoon, as you're patching a sail in the shadow of the mainmast, Johnson appears at your side. He's holding a letter, a summons from Kingston, marked with the Admiralty's seal. They want me to come. Give my account again, he says, his voice low. I'd rather chase a ghost than sit another day in a council room. He looks out over the bay. The men will need you. Keep them sharp. You nod, feeling the old ache of responsibility settle on your shoulders. Johnson boards a packet for Kingston the next morning, and you're left in charge of the Resolute for the first time. The men accept your command without question. They trust you, you who have faced the Ghost Fleet and lived. That week a storm lashes the coast. 2 ships are lost, and when the weather clears, rumours swirl. A black sloop seen dancing in the spray. A voice calling out from the foam. You lead a search party along the reefs, but find only broken timbers and a flock of seabirds crying in the wind. The next days are tense. The men are on edge, tempers short. Big Tom, always the peacemaker, reminds you of a lesson you once learned from Johnson. There's nothing on this sea that can't be faced with a steady hand and an honest heart. You repeat it to the men, and it helps at least for a while. At last, Johnson returns. Tired but satisfied that the Admiralty's appetite for testimony is sated. They'll write their reports and the sea will do as she pleases, he says. And you can't help but laugh. In the quiet after the storm, you reflect on all that has passed. Crowley and his fleet, the night chasers, the burning sloops, the endless stories that have made you and your crew both legend and prisoner to memory. You realize you have become part of the myth now, and that your own story will be told long after you've left these waters. One golden evening, as the sun sets behind Port Royal, you climb to the forecastle and look out over the harbour, the city, the restless, ever-mysterious sea. Lanterns flicker, casting long shadows. Somewhere far off, a bell tolls. The air smells of salt and promise, and things unseen. For a moment, just a moment, you think you see a black shape slipping across the water, low and silent, a silver-tipped cane glimmering in the dusk. But when you look again, it's gone. The sea keeps her secrets, and you, who have chased them, know better than most that sometimes the secret is what keeps you alive. The seasons shift once more, and the Resolute rides the restless boundary between old story and new reality. You're not the same sailor who first set foot on her planks. Your hair is flecked with grey, your steps slower but more sure. The city itself changes too. New warehouses rise along the quays. The shanties and markets sprawl further each month, and foreign traders crowd into Port Royal with coins and cargo, and stories, always stories. In the taverns, The legend of Crowley's ghost fleet is a currency that never loses value. Each retelling gets wilder. Now Crowley not only haunts the sea but can conjure storms, steer ships with a whistle, or sink a sloop by staring at it from the mist. One night, a young American privateer buys drinks for the whole room in exchange for a tale about the Black Captain. You listen, amused as Big Tom describes Crowley's eyes glowing like lanterns and his ship gliding across the waves without ever touching the water. You catch Tom's winkies spinning it for the stranger's benefit, but the old fear lingers underneath the laughter. But beneath the showmanship, there's a seriousness to the Navy's vigilance. Convoys are better protected, lookouts sharper, discipline ironclad. Johnson inspects the men with a new severity, quick to reward caution and quicker to punish carelessness. The Admiralty's newest orders are clear: maintain presence, deter piracy, and keep public confidence high. It's not as simple as it sounds. For every captured smuggler or would-be pirate, 3 more drift into legend, fueled by tales of Crowley's cunning and the ghosts that still stalk the moonlit reefs. One clear dawn, you're summoned to the governor's residence, a stately, if weather-beaten mansion at the edge of town. Johnson stands waiting, a packet of dispatches in hand. There's talk in London of medals and promotions, he tells you with a smile, half proud, half resigned. They want heroes, not just survivors. You shrug. Surviving is hard enough. He laughs, slapping your shoulder. But it's the tales that live on. Inside, the governor presents you both to a clutch of visiting dignitaries. You endure the handshakes and polite questions, the requests for just one true story of the ghost fleet. You oblige, choosing the most believable parts: the night chase, the false lanterns, Crowley's silver cane. You leave out the things that still make your skin crawl: the way the sea sometimes goes silent for hours, the dreams that wake you sweating, sure that someone is calling your name from the water. Back aboard the Resolute, the real work continues. The latest batch of new recruits arrives, some no older than boys, others seasoned but untested in these peculiar waters. You teach them as Johnson once taught you, how to spot the first sign of a squall, how to judge the color of water over reef, how to tell a trick from a threat. At night, you walk the deck, lantern swinging, repeating the old lessons. Some nights you find yourself alone at the bow, eyes fixed on the horizon. You know every trick of the light, every familiar outline, but there are still times when something in the distance looks wrong. A flicker, a shadow, the echo of a song you can't quite remember. The city's rhythm beats on. Markets open, cargoes change hands, weddings and funerals and Sunday sermons. Yet when ships are lost or a trader returns with tales of strange lights, the old unease returns. The insurance men raise their rates, the merchants grow nervous, and the preachers thunder against the evils that rise from superstition. And still, every child in town can recite the story of Crowley's ghost fleet. Spring brings another round of storms. One lashes the coast so violently that half the city is flooded, the roads running with mud and seawater. Ships drag anchor, a few are lost, and one, a Navy sloop called the Bonnie Lass, is found aground with her masts snapped and not a soul aboard. The newspapers scream of ghostly vengeance. The practical men blame the weather, but you notice even the boldest captains keep an extra watch that week. Through it all, Johnson leans on you more than ever. His health falters in the heat, but his will is as sharp as a boarding pike. He confides that he plans to retire soon, to leave the sea and its legends to the younger men. You feel a pang of something like grief, though you can't say why. Maybe it's knowing you'll have to be the steady hand when he's gone. Maybe it's realizing that Crowley's story and your own will pass into other voices. One evening, as the crew gathers around a rare bonfire on the shore, Johnson joins you. He's silent for a long time, watching the flames. Finally, he says, "We made it through, didn't we? You, me, the Resolute, against pirates and ghosts and all." You nod. "We did, but the stories will outlive us." He smiles, tired and content. "Then let the next generation have their ghosts." The bonfire burns low. Men sing, voices carrying out across the dark water. The city behind you glows with lanterns, and far out in the bay, the ships ride at anchor, their silhouettes sharp against the star-strewn sky. When Johnson leaves, you take your place at the head of the watch. The crew trusts you now, because you've stood the test, because you know the truth behind the stories, because you understand that to be a sailor here is to dance with fear and wonder every night. A new day dawns, bright and clear. As you pace the deck, you see a boy from town running along the quay, waving a stick like a cutlass, shouting, "Crowley's coming." Other children join him, their laughter echoing. You smile, knowing that this too is part of the legacy, the story that keeps sailors careful and the city alive to possibility. You realize then that the Ghost Fleet is more than a legend. It is the memory of what men can do when the world turns strange, the shadow that makes the light feel brighter, the reason to keep looking past the edge of certainty. And somewhere, just beyond sight, you imagine Crowley's ship, drifting on the tide, a lesson, a warning, a hope that the unknown still waits for those brave or foolish enough to seek it. The sea keeps her secrets, and so do you. The seasons spiral on, and Port Royal becomes a city balanced between memory and myth. For you and the crew of the Resolute, each day's work is steeped in the unspoken knowledge of everything that's come before, the long chase, the terror and excitement, the moments when the world tilted and nothing seemed impossible, not even a ship that could vanish at will, or a pirate whose legend would outlive his bones. By the time summer's heat returns, the harbour is crowded with vessels from a dozen nations. Children dive from the piers, merchantmen haggle with customs men in a dozen languages, and all around the taverns the talk is of hurricanes, sugar prices, and still, always the Ghost Fleet. It is a city that remembers, even as it changes. Johnson steps down from command on a clear, hot day, his final parade a simple affair, the men at attention on the deck, the new captain saluting, a handful of old hands gathered at the rail with you. He stands for a moment at the wheel, gazing down at the planks worn smooth by years of boots and sea salt. You see the sadness in his eyes, the pride and a quiet relief. "Hold her steady, lad," he tells you, shaking your hand hard. The sea keeps going, and so do the stories. After he leaves, you take the helm formally. Now, not just in fact, the men accept it, because you've already earned it through storms and blood and quiet, persistent leadership. There's a subtle weight in the captain's cabin that you feel every morning, looking at Crowley's battered journal on the shelf, at the battered spyglass Johnson left behind. The city outside is noisy, careless, new, but you and the ship, and the story you all share, are something older. The months pass in a blur of work and small pleasures. There are pirate rumors still, of course. A sloop attacked off Cuba, a bark vanished in a thunderstorm, a lonely light drifting across the reefs at midnight, but none with the old terror, none with Crowley's cunning. Most nights the only ghosts on the water are the ones conjured by memory and moonlight. Still, you keep the watches sharp, the sails tight, the men honest, not out of fear but because the story demands it, because every legend is a lesson for the living. You're invited to speak at the governor's annual banquet, a strange honour, and one you accept with amusement. The hall is bright with candles and banners, the great and good of the island in their best clothes. After the meal, as the band plays and laughter flows, the governor calls you forward and asks for just one true account of the night. The Ghost Fleet vanished. The room goes silent. You tell the story, not the wildest version, but the one closest to truth of men outwitted by their own reflection, of courage that held when reason failed, of the night the sea showed you how thin the line between fear and wonder truly is. The applause is warm, and later as you stand on the balcony looking out over the harbour, a young lieutenant sidles up and asks, "Did you ever really see him, Crowley, I mean?" You nod. "We saw him, all right. Saw him bleed, saw him laugh, saw him run, but in the end, it was the story that mattered most." He grins. "Think we'll ever see the like again?" You smile, feeling the sea breeze on your face. "If you stay long enough, you'll see everything." You return to the ship as midnight bells chime across the water. The Resolute rocks gently at her mooring, lanterns glowing, the city's music fading into the soft hush of the waves. You make your final rounds for the night, pausing at the prow to look out across the endless dark, the place where the legend began. You realize, with a quiet certainty, that you wouldn't trade these memories, not the fear, not the losses, not even the nights you dreamed of Crowley's black ship, for all the easy peace the land could offer. The men sleep easy, their dreams lighter than before. The city behind you bustles on, hungry for new stories, but you know that some will never fade, and as you watch the horizon, where the moon paints silver paths across the water, you feel the presence of every sailor who ever looked for something just beyond the reach of light. You touch the battered spyglass once more, then close your eyes, listening to the lull of the tide, the faint laughter of ghosts. And so, the world turns quietly beneath the night sky, the Caribbean breathing deep and slow, the harbour lights flickering in a gentle rhythm as if to signal that, at last, the day is truly done. You feel your shoulders soften, your eyes grow heavy, the weight of command and memory ebbing away with the tide. The ship rocks gently, a cradle for grown men and old ghosts alike, while the warm night air whispers through the rigging, carrying the hush of distant waves and the faintest scent of salt and rum. Above you, the stars shine bright and timeless, indifferent to stories and storms. Below, the sea keeps her secrets as always, holding them safe in her deep, cool embrace. The crew breathes easy in their hammocks, safe for tonight, and even the old hull seems to sigh with satisfaction, as if grateful for one more peaceful watch. The world grows softer as the hours drift by. The distant bell on the point tolls a sleepy note, lanterns dim, voices fade, and the city beyond the harbour dreams its own dreams of fortune, of adventure, of legends that never quite die. Somewhere, a ship creaks softly, and a seagull calls once, then is silent. You settle in, letting your heart beat slow, letting your mind wander on the tide of memory. The worries of the waking world slip away, replaced by the quiet comfort that here and now, all is well. The sea will watch over you tonight, as she always has, your home, in the way only a sailor can be, rocked gently between yesterday's shadows and tomorrow's light. Sleep comes softly, rest easy. The ghosts will keep their distance, for now, to sweet dreams.